Welcome back to Gillette Stadium, everybody. My name is Mike Petraglia, joined as always by Patriots expert columnist for WEEI.com, Christopher Price. Chris, first things first, let's get Flaggate out of the way. Your take on it, and do you think the Patriots are over and done with it?
Well, I think they are over and done with it. Bill said as much in the press conference. We've heard from a handful of guys so far this week, and they've all said we're moving on to Denver.
Right.
I do.
You believe them?
Well, I think it's still going to stick in their craw a little bit, particularly when you consider the fact that these games can come back to haunt you, especially when you're talking about a home field advantage, that kind of stuff. I think some penalty needed to be called in that situation. You can't call illegal contact. You can't call defensive holding under the letter of the law.
Right.
I don't know why you couldn't have called the defensive pass interference in that case. They went back. They fell back on the idea of catchability. They didn't believe it was catchable. But I think if there's one guy on this offense who had a chance to be competitive for that ball, it was Rob Gronkowski with that massive catch radius.
Here's the one thing I really do think the Patriots have a reason to be very upset. That one play, Chris, could have huge ramifications in the AFC playoff picture, because instead of the Patriots being 8-2 with a chance of catching the Denver Broncos with a win here on Sunday night against Peyton Manning and company, they're 7-3. They lose that game, they fall back into a tie with the Cincinnati Bengals, and they've lost that tiebreaker, and the chances for getting a first-round bye and either a first or a second seed in the AFC change drastically on that single play.
It puts a priority, in terms of timing, and I understand your point, I think it also puts a priority on not winning out, but winning the games at the end of the year that you have to win. You haven't given yourself a whole lot of wiggle room.
Right.
You haven't given yourself a whole lot of room for error. You have to win these games at the end of the year against the Browns and against the Ravens and against the Dolphins in those games.
And the Bills.
And the Bills, exactly. You haven't given yourself any sort of room for error, any sort of margin for error. It's a tough game. It's a tough loss. And I think that, like we said, I think that they put it behind them, but I think it's going to stick in their craw for a little bit.
Well, let's take the page out of Coach Belichick's book, move forward on to Denver. Everybody knows the kind of season Peyton Manning is having. He is certainly in the conversation for NFL MVP. He had one of the greatest starts in NFL history, the single greatest 7-game start of any quarterback in NFL history. How do the Patriots, given all of their injuries, Aqib Talib could not finish the game the other night, Monday night, because his hip was re-aggravated. Steve Gregory may or may not be back from his thumb injury. Alfonso Dennard apparently is out after a minor procedure on his knee. How do they go about defending Peyton Manning and, more importantly, all of his weapons?
You keep him off the field as long as possible. You control the tone of the game. You control the tempo of the game. You run the ball. You put together 7, 8, 9-minute drives, and you keep him on the sideline as long as possible. You remember those old game plans from 2002, 2003,
right.
2004? Yep. You run the ball. You kill the clock. You try and keep the ball away from that offense as long as possible, and I think that's what the Patriots are going to do on Sunday night against the Broncos.
You wrote about it early in the season, about Stephen Ridley and his fumbles, trying to bring some perspective to what the running back here with New England is going through. He came up and bit the Patriots in the rear end again on Monday night, and Stephen Ridley knows this. I mean, they were driving for a touchdown to respond to Carolina's first touchdown of the game. They fumble, they lose the ball, Carolina goes down, makes it a 10-0 game. That singular possession was costly. The decision by Belichick to bench Ridley for about 18 snaps is an interesting one, because I think he knows deep down the Patriots need Stephen Ridley if they're going to have any success running the ball and having balance on offense the rest of the year.
I think it was an interesting breakthrough in their relationship, and not to get all psychoanalytical here, but I think now
why not?
Exactly, yeah. I think Belichick now understands that you don't want to take him off the field. You understand who he is and what he does and his capability as a running back. You don't want to take him off the field for too long, because ultimately you're hurting your own team. I thought we saw a little bit of that earlier in the year when they brought him back on the field against Pittsburgh. There's a difference between a takeaway and a fumble, and I think Belichick elaborated on that in the wake of that game. But what we saw the other night, that was a straight-up fumble. They were able to bring him back after a handful of snaps, brought him back in the second half. He ran very well. I think this is what you're going to get with Stephen Ridley. Look, 1,200-yard running backs don't grow on trees, and I think that they have to take the good with the bad when you're talking about Ridley. There are going to be occasional problems with ball security. Look, I'm going to say this into the camera. I'm going to say it very slowly. All running backs fumble. Walter Payton fumbled. Jim Brown fumbled. It's part of their game. It's part of what happens. It's all about minimizing that and minimizing that impact going forward.
And obviously all of the naysayers will say, sure, all of those guys fumbled, but Stephen Ridley is not Jim Brown. He's not Walter Payton yet. And, obviously you take the good with the bad. Let's move on to the elements. And you can probably hear by the wind in the microphone right now, it's windy. It's getting that time of year here at Gillette Stadium. A high on Sunday of about 32, 33 degrees. It's going to get cold. Peyton Manning used to be that quarterback who played inside a dome for the Indianapolis Colts. He's no longer that guy. He plays outside in Denver. That's his home territory. How do the Patriots take advantage of the elements Sunday night, which are expected to be, if nothing else, very cold?
Again, I'll go back to the same thing I said before. You want to keep them off the field. You want to keep them out of a rhythm. If you get in a rhythm, you get a lot of snaps, you start to get warm, you start to get comfortable, you start to get loose. And I think the Patriots want to, again, keep them on the sideline as long as possible. If you're sitting on the sideline, you're getting cold. You're 38 years old, you're getting stiff. You're not in the flow of the game. And I think that plays a big role in this thing as well. I think you want to keep him off the field. You want to keep him when he does get on the field, you want to make it sporadic, and I think that's where the Patriots can would be able to gain some sort of advantage here. You ask Bill about it, he's going to say both teams have to play in the same elements. But I think that there's something to the idea keeping Manning off the field as long as possible. Obviously, that helps from a practical perspective, but it also helps in terms of staying warm.
Another thing that Bill Belichick spoke about on Wednesday morning was number 83, Wes Welker. Everybody knows that he signed a 2-year, $12 million contract with the Denver Broncos, a chance to play with Peyton, and frankly, a chance to get out from underneath what he felt, I think, was a situation in New England where he was smothered a little bit. I don't think Wes Welker ever felt like he could totally be himself here, his personality, and for whatever it was worth, he took the opportunity last offseason, last March, to sign with the Denver Broncos. What kind of reception will Wes Welker get, and do you expect him to play and recover from the concussion or the concussion-like symptoms he had on Sunday night?
He's going to play. I think he's going to play. I think it's going to be debatable how effective he's going to be because of those concussion symptoms, but I think he's going to play. I think he's going to get a strong reaction. I think it's going to be more boos than cheers, but I think he's going to get a positive reaction. There are going to be some people in this stadium who are going to remember the good times. They're not going to remember the way it ended, but I do. I think he's going to get a strong reception. I think he's going to play. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Patriots decide to go up against him, given all of the problems that they've had, the personnel problems they've had in the secondary. Do you put Logan Ryan in the slot against him? Do you move Kyle Arrington into the slot as opposed to playing outside? So there are a few questions the Patriots have when it comes to trying to defend someone with Welker, even if he is slowed by the concussion.
I think, Chris, you put it best. You got to keep Peyton Manning and his weapons off the field if you're going to have a chance to beat the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are likely going to be the road favorite, and the Patriots the home dog in this game, and it'll be interesting to see how the Patriots come out and attack them. What happens?
I think New England ends up winning this thing, just barely.
Really?
I do. I just have a feeling after what happened last week, I think that the Patriots are able to get back on track. I think they're able to put something together here at home. This is a very tough home team. The 3 losses they've had this year are all road losses. And I will say this too, they just seem to play close games. The Pittsburgh game and the Tampa Bay game, that's kind of those are the outliers, I think, in terms of when you look at this team over the course of the full 2013 season to this point. Mm-hmm. They play tough games, they play close games, they are well prepared to play a close game at home. I think if they're able to consistently put together those 7, 8, 9-minute drives, they're able to keep Manning on the sideline, they're able to run the ball, they're able to run the ball consistently, a steady dose of Ridley, Vereen, Blunt, Bolden, keep banging it in there with those guys, I think the Patriots are going to win this thing. I'm going to say we're looking at like a 35-34 game.
I was going to say 27-24 Patriots, but obviously a close game in store.
Exactly, too. I think it's going to be one of those games. We can look back over the years. This is the 14th time that Brady has played Manning, and I think more than half of those games have been decided by a touchdown or less. I think it's going to be the same thing again here Sunday night.
Well, the Patriots have a chance to rebound emotionally, physically, whatever term you want to use. They're 7-3. They need this game as badly as anybody needs a game in this rivalry. The Broncos, I should say, they come into the game 9-1. It'll be a fascinating matchup, Chris, and look forward to Sunday night, definitely. He's Christopher Price. I'm Mike Petraglia, WEEI.com.